All right, guys, welcome to Trainer Talk episode 9 with Grant and Colin. Today we are interviewing Austin Keith, aka Barefoot Will on Twitter. We're going to be talking ultra marathoning, barefoot shoes, and kind of everything in between. So we're excited to have him on. Welcome, Austin.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me. I'm excited to dive in and to get to know you guys a little bit deeper and have a good conversation.
Absolutely, bro. Absolutely. We're pumped. We're pumped. So maybe we can just kind of get it started. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about kind of the business or program that you run.
Yeah, I kind of have a finger in a lot of things, but my main source of income is going to be my coaching business and consulting business, which basically I take clients on that are dealing most of the time with some sort of like a persistent injury, or
Mm.
maybe they're dealing with some sort of like a lack of mobility that uh, could be hindering them from achieving whatever their goals look like. So this could be, they're trying to get into long distance running, or they're just trying to get healthier for their family, and they just can't quite get past a barrier as far as pain or lack of mobility, or maybe they're just wanting to establish a foundation to their fitness, and that's kind of where I meet people at most of the time. So I work very closely with all of my clients one-on-one. I write all of my clients programs individually catered to their needs, and that's just something that I took away from my time that I've spent in the typical PT world. I have a background in physical therapy, graduated, got a degree for that in 2016. And a lot of times I just saw, people were placed on a one size fits all protocol, and it just wouldn't get the results that people deserved. And specifically, the name there, Barefoot Will, I have a
Yeah.
ton of knowledge and expertise surrounding the foot and the foundation of our body. So a lot of my programming and what I coach on is kind of that from the ground up approach, more of a root cause approach. So yeah, that's kind of what I had implemented into my, I guess you could say, my PT scope practice, and
Yeah.
then it carried over into my coaching. So, and then
Awesome.
of course, I do the camping retreats, all inclusive camping retreats, which you can see the flag in the background with Rove, and then affiliate marketing associated with barefoot shoe companies and sock companies and things like that.
For sure. For sure, man. Yeah, that's awesome. I was gonna say, it's funny you bring up like the foot health and like the kind of how that's kind of the basis for everything, especially with like ultra runners. My
Mm.
dad has actually been struggling with his foot health as well, so I might have to actually refer him to you. I don't know, maybe, but it's definitely, as a runner myself, thankfully, I mean, knock on wood, I haven't had too many injuries or anything associated with that, but I know like if you have a foot injury, it's like you start to run into all sorts of issues there.
Yeah, most definitely. Your foundation affects everything above. It's just very similar to like the foundation of your home. If you have a crack in the foundation of your home, eventually that's going to lead to a crack in the wall. That's going to lead to a crack in the ceiling. And then more than likely, that's going to lead to a leak in the roof. So all these things at the bottom really, really have a lot to do with going up the kinetic chain, specifically like at the knees and the hips and the angle of your pelvis as well.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So, what ultimately first got you started into the barefoot route? Because I know you started with the PT route. So, what
Hmm.
ultimately led from you going from you being a high school senior to deciding, let's do the PT route, and then we're going to go into really more barefootish?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I never did love being in the classroom. I did relatively well as far as grades go, getting through high school, but it just wasn't much of a challenge. And so going into college, I knew that I wanted to be around some sort of an athletic environment, to where I could be outside, be more active. I maybe could have played college baseball, but it would have been at like a really small JUCO. I knew I wasn't good enough to play anywhere further than maybe somewhere like that. So I was like, well, maybe I can get into athletic training. And I was actually dating a girl that was an athletic training student at a small college not too far away from where I was living. So I got a firsthand look at what athletic training looked at. while I was still in high school. And I didn't really like that because of the demand for her life. Like on Friday nights, she was at games. On Saturdays, she was gone. On Sundays, she was doing recovery. And then throughout the week, you have to be there for almost every practice. So it took a lot away from her life. And I was like, well, that's kind of out the window. What's the next closest thing? And that would have been physical therapy. And if you're familiar with the physical therapy world, if you go to get a doctorate of physical therapy, you have to get a bachelor's and then about 3.5 more years to get the doctorate. And so that was going to be another big chunk of my life that I was going to be sitting in the classroom. So I was a little bit weary of that. And my mom actually found out about physical therapist assistant school, which in the PT world is very similar to like a physician and a physician's assistant. And that was only 2.5 years. And I could start basically the summer I graduated high school. So that's exactly what I did. 4 weeks after I graduated high school, went to PTA school, started getting the prereqs. Luckily, I got into the program first year. And then we had to do clinicals in PTA school. So one of my first clinicals was at a clinic in a small town here in Arkansas that had 2 Division II colleges in the town and about 4 or 5 surrounding high schools. And we were also attached to a gym. So we got a really high influx of an athletic population. And we would take patients into the gym and do a lot of functional training there. And while I was in clinicals, the boss was like, hey, man, like after you graduate, I want you to come work for me. So I did. And then after I started working there, it was maybe 5 or 6 months. I was just doing some research on like how to better treat my athletes. And I was actually on Instagram and an ad for Vivo barefoot shoes showed up. So I was like, man, that's an oxymoron. Like, well, what the heck is a barefoot shoe? Did a little research, went ahead and bought a pair, and I didn't transition like I should. I jumped straight into the barefoot shoes immediately, which I think was a good thing that happened to me because it was a dramatic change within my body that I noticed. Like within the first few weeks, I noticed that my back was kind of sore, especially in my mid back. But I was also able to like engage my hamstrings a little bit easier in the gym. I was also able to feel my abs a little bit more. And then 3 or 4 months later, I just noticed that my strength in the gym was going up as well. And I didn't really change any of my programming. So it just led me to believe that, man, something is going on with my feet. Like I can start to notice a pretty significant change. So I really started to do a personal research journey there. And then that led me to transferring that knowledge over to my patients and clients that were coming through the clinic. And once I implemented kind of that more root cause foundational type of approach, I started to notice quite a bit of changes within those athletes as well. And all these athletes, like they're Division II, college football players. They're super strong in the weight room, playing at high levels, but their mechanics would just be really poor in the weight room. Like their knees would just cave in terribly. Feet are just incredibly flat. And so I just started to kind of piece these things together in my mind and started treating accordingly to that. And then from then on up to this point, that's kind of how I've treated clients and patients ever since.
Well, cool. Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, I think you said earlier, like ground up, right? Like if your foundation, if you're having these issues, like it kind of translates into like the biomechanic part. I mean, I know. So I actually played. It was interesting. You were talking earlier about college baseball. I actually played college baseball myself, and I was a pitcher. And I know for a fact it's the same kind of a thing with a pitching motion as it is with a lift, as it is with any kind of athletic activity. Like if you have some issue kind of lower in the chain, it's going to eventually translate into some kind of an issue later on. That's part of why I couldn't really stay healthy for very long. I had a ton of arm injuries, but no, that's really interesting to hear you say, like kind of how you got into barefoot shoes and like kind of why you kind of made the switch. So maybe like I don't know if you don't mind just kind of explaining to the audience watching here, like kind of some of the benefits of barefoot shoes. I mean, because kind of my understanding is like traditional shoes, it's like the toe box is really small, so it kind of like squishes your foot tighter. A lot of barefoot shoes I think are wider, and then also like there's the kind of the barefoot shoes are flat, whereas like traditional shoes have like an arch, and then it kind of changes like your walking mechanics and stuff. So maybe you could just talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head with a couple of the main features there. It's really kind of a logical approach to trying to align your foundation with how it's supposed to be naturally or from the factory, right? So if you take a look at like how humans are born, their toes are the widest part of the foot. Like I have a daughter that's about to turn 6 months old. Her toes are definitely the widest part of her foot, and that's the case for almost every human. And then the foot, when people start to walk, is supposed to be, flat to the ground. Heel is the same level from the ground as the toes. But if we look at most conventional footwear, the Nikes, Adidas, even like dress shoes that people wear to work, those features of those shoes alter the natural shape of human foot, or alter the natural shape of the human foot. They just don't align with the natural human anatomy. So a couple of the features that you touched on, the narrow toe box, most shoes that are on the market nowadays, you can just look at them and they kind of come to a very narrow triangular taper at the toe. And that really squishes the toes together, specifically the big toe, which is very, very vital for maintaining foot health, is that functionality and separation of the big toe. But you also have that elevation of the heel comparatively to the toes in the forefoot, which is referred to as drop in the shoe world. And what that does is obviously elevates the heel, which is going to in turn shorten the Achilles tendon. It creates a little bit of tightness and stiffness within your calf and soleus muscles in the lower leg. But that also shifts your body weight forward up the kinetic chain. So if you think about just standing with your heels on like a 1 inch thick book, then you're going to lean forward a little bit. In order to compensate for that forward lean, your body's going to make minor adjustments up the kinetic chain. So most people will make adjustments like with their pelvis and low back. So basically, most people will anteriorly pelvic tilt, which means that your pelvis, if it's like a bowl, it's going to tip forward a little bit. Yeah. And then when that happens, you have to kind of bring your upper torso back a little bit. So that creates a really big curve in the low back. And then, yeah, if you think about like the thickness of most shoes, they're just going to have a ton of cushion, and they're also going to have a lot of arch support as well. Which is going to alter your body's ability to feel the ground beneath the foot. So you kind of lose the connectivity of your proprioception to the ground beneath your foot as well. And then artificial arch support, the arch is comprised of a ton of musculature and also some connective tissue as well that are very reliant on continuous load. But arch support kind of takes that need away. So basically it's doing all the work for your foot instead of your foot actually doing the work. So that leads to a lot of muscle atrophy, which is like a loss of musculature within the muscles of the foot. So your feet actually weaken because they're not really required to remain strong anymore.
Makes sense. Very cool. Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, all those problems kind of adds up for on a lot of different factors. I guess like your foot shape is going to be impacted, your ground feel, and then also like potentially, I think I heard you mention like the kind of arching, the anterior pelvic tilt, and then like kind of back arching that you have to do to compensate. Like I can see people having back problems and things like that as a result as well.
Yeah, a ton. Like a lot of times when patients come into the clinic with, let's just say, lower back pain, then obviously we need to figure out why that low back pain is occurring and then treat that area. But a lot of times I will see kind of an association or a correlation between their low back pain and the status of their foundation. Which is why it's a little bit troublesome in the PT world, because if you have a diagnosis for low back pain, then the insurance wants to see you treating with low back exercises. But in reality, we need to address the whole kinetic chain. So we need to strengthen the low back, the glutes, and the hamstrings, but we also need to address their foundation as well, because that's going to have an effect. And if it's left unaddressed, then more than likely that low back pain is going to reoccur.
That makes sense.
So I know you said one of the biggest reasons you got into the more barefoot route was to, ultimately help your clients and help your patients better. If who like people in specific, or not necessarily specific, but who were some of the biggest like reasons and inspirations that you looked to help you gain more knowledge over the barefoot route?
Yeah, man, very, very good question. I would say that there were a couple of people in the social media realm that were kind of touching on the subject a little bit. Squat University would be one of the bigger ones. And he's actually just within the last month or so came out with an actual barefoot shoe. But he was touching on the foot health quite a bit when I was kind of first dabbling into it. There was another account called Move You that was on Instagram, and they were touching on it pretty good. Um, but they were never actually solely focused on foundational health. So I began to really take a deep search into, who is solely focusing on foundational health and putting out a ton of information that needs to be fed. Not only so I could increase my knowledge, but like so other people could go to this resource and, find out for themselves. And I just couldn't really find anybody that was doing a great job, in my opinion. So when I kind of started to get the idea that I wanted to dive into entrepreneurship and hired a business coach, he was asking me like, what do you have very specific niche knowledge on? What could you use to help people and fill a gap that needs to be filled? And I was like, man, like it's so obvious to me, but it's got to be foundational health. So that is what kind of drove me into filling this gap of this niche of foundational health, because I really couldn't find any reliable sources that were like putting out enough continuous information on it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, like when I think about barefoot, like the barefoot Twitter space, there's really, I think you're the only account that like kind of comes to my mind. I don't know. Do you think of any others that kind of talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, ever since I've seen you, Austin, be on Twitter, I've seen a lot more people, transition over to the barefoot, and all of them are saying the same things to build the foundation up. It's better for your feet, but none of them have actually really deep dived into why versus you. So, I mean, you were the reason why I decided to go into the barefoot, get the barefoot shoes, the toe socks. But other than that, I mean, Squat University, I've followed them for 20 years of my life, and they've talked. I mean, I've seen him talk about a lot, but he's no one's deep dived into it quite like you have.
I agree with that. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. It is kind of crazy. I wasn't on Twitter before, basically it was December of 22, and then I started posting consistently in March of 23, I think. Um, and like I said earlier, I didn't really see anybody kind of filling that gap even on Twitter. And then after maybe 6 months, a year or so, I did start to see that subject just coming up a lot and a lot more. And I don't really know if I'm the reason for that, but um, I was very excited to see it start to catch on, because it just kind of added a little bit of validity to the messaging that I was trying to get across. It seemed like, people were a little bit more acceptable of it. Except, when I was a smaller account on Twitter, it's kind of a weird thing. It seems like the less followers you have, the less people are prone to kind of listen to what you have to say. So I got a lot of skepticism in the beginning, but as my name started to get out there a little bit more, it started to be received a little bit more, and of course, a lot of other people are talking about it now. So
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I think that's true for any small account starting out. I mean, I know Colin, you and I were small, like that probably 2 years ago, whenever I first started, it was the same kind of thing. But as you grow and expand, you get a little bit more authority. 100%.
yeah, which is weird. That's a weird human psychology thing to social media. It's really crazy. Like you can have people with 70,000, 100,000 followers that really don't know what they're talking about, but people think that they do because that number's there.
Absolutely, 100% right, 100% right.
Yeah. With that, I remember I posted a tweet. It was probably one of like the first month of me posting consecutively on Twitter. I posted a tweet and like people were like, oh, like skeptical about it. And I posted the exact same tweet word for word 2 weeks ago, and everybody just agreed. I'm like, wow, like they didn't even change up the wording, didn't change it, nothing. And they just all switched, and I'm like, wow,
It's funny.
100% true. Yeah, very, very, very funny. Um, yeah, and I guess maybe the next question I have for you, Austin. So, say somebody like comes to you, they do like a consultation or whatever, and like they're struggling with their foot health, whether it's they have bunions, whether it's they have pain when they're walking, whether it's some other kind of like foot health related issue. Like, what would be the first kind of place that you'd point them to? Would you say just jump right into barefoot shoes? Would you say like do some corrective exercises, or like what would you kind of have them? What would be one of the main things you have them do first? I guess probably depends on the case a little bit, but
Yeah, a lot of them are very case dependent. I love to get on a Zoom call with somebody and have the opportunity to kind of really learn what their lifestyle looks like. What has led them up to this point in time to what they're dealing with, and then what they're requiring out of their body on a day-to-day basis. So once I kind of figure out, all of those variables, then I kind of have to meet them with where they're at. Once I kind of figure out where we can start, most of the time, I won't suggest that people jump straight into barefoot shoes. Um, I kind of categorize some shoes as transition shoes, which would be a wide toe box zero drop shoe, but with like a little bit of a padded sole to it. A couple examples would be like ultras or limbs.
mm-hmm.
Some people have a little bit more of an easier transition as far as into footwear through a transition shoe. Some people that are a lot more active, they've just spent a little bit more time, walking around barefoot. They don't necessarily have quite as much pain. Then we can start in a barefoot shoe, but we have to take the transition slow and steady. So basically, like if you're getting a 10,000 step day, then we would go 2 to 3,000 steps per day for the first couple of weeks or so. And then if the body responds well to that, then we'll increase to like 4 to 5,000 steps the following week and continuously progress like that.
Right.
And then where my expertise comes in is pairing the transition of footwear with corrective exercises. So that would look like doing a whole lot of foot specific activities, basically just waking up the feet, gaining some strength out of the feet, gaining mobility of the feet. But I also really focus on the kinetic chain as well. So the way I design each of my clients' routines is going to be from that ground up approach, which is we're going to target the feet, we're going to target the ankles, the shins, a little bit of the knees, and then we're going to move up and do a lot of hip mobility, a lot of glute focused activities where the big toes are engaged to where basically everything comes together as a collective unit for compound movement to where you're still using the feet to grip the ground, but we're using the feet to engage the glutes to, a better facilitation feedback loop, basically. And then this process varies, like as far as how long people need to work with me. Sometimes it happens relatively quickly, within 4 to like 6 weeks. Some people, they just maybe a little bit older or they're coming from a little bit more of a deficit. So it could take up to like 3 or 4 months or so.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Makes sense. Cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Definitely.
What would you say is one of the biggest challenges that you faced when you first started out, going more into the entrepreneurial side of it? What was one of the biggest challenges that you saw was happening with your specific programming and coaching?
Ooh, yeah. So obviously, I'd had a lot of experience within the physical therapy realm, so that carried over a little bit of knowledge for me. And then I had also like a lifting background. I just love to go in the gym, so that helped a lot. But when I transitioned into like the entrepreneurial side, I would say learning the ropes around the business side of things was the hardest part. Like figuring out systems to where I was keeping up with pace or clients' progress, and then making sure I was able to document that accurately, and then keep up with how I could progress them properly. Like I never really did have true full reign in the PT clinics because of diagnosis codes and insurance and all these kind of red tapes that I could not cross. And then once I moved over to the coaching side and it was all up to me, like I had a ton of freedom. So I had to kind of develop systems to where basically I could put somebody through an assessment and then learn that through the program, additional deficits would be pointed out that were going to need to be met and addressed as well throughout the process. So making sure that basically I took a ton of notes, learning about, how clients would react to, invoicing or, receiving payments or criticism or, keeping people accountable. Because the accountability thing was not much of a challenge in the PT clinics because they're just scheduled to come 2 or 3 times a week and that was it. But as far as like keeping clients accountable with coaching, I have to keep up and check in with them, make sure that they're scheduling check-in calls, make sure that, you know, that they're doing their exercises correctly. So there's a lot of, I guess, or I should say, a big learning curve on just how to make sure that I could get the client results as best as possible and make their experience as best as possible while they're working with me and paying me money. And in the beginning, I just didn't have the confidence there to like ask people to pay me. As yeah, I guess that's referred to as imposter syndrome. Am I really capable of getting people results on a platform like this? So once I kind of got a few more clients under my belt, that started to fade away a little bit more. And now that I'm like a year and a half, almost 2 years into it, I can see back then how, I just needed to build a ton of confidence, and that just comes with a lot of repetition, which is how it carries over in a lot of areas of life.
Yeah, man, I 100% resonate with that. And I'm sure Colin, you probably do too as a coach, but like starting out like a year or two ago is the same thing. It's like when you first get into coaching, it's like, like I think I can get them a result, but it's like I don't really know until I've actually gone and gotten clients results. But then it's like, once you have, 15, 20, 25 or more clients under your belt, it's like, okay, like, I know what I'm doing now. Like I'm confident that this works. And it's like I'm confident, asking for money for my services because realistically it is worth, I'm sure you probably feel this way too, Austin. It's like your service is worth like, many times over what you're charging for it to the right person.
Yeah, definitely. And, the validity in basically gathering client testimonials is huge. And this is going to be with any type of business, right? So you have to have the reviews and the testimonials there to provide that psychological relief to somebody that you're pitching your services to. And that just goes by putting in the reps and grinding it out till you can get those until the time comes. You know what I mean? So it's a process. The concept of delayed gratification was something that I really had to lean into within the first year. And that paid off big time, just knowing that, keep building and it will pay off in the beginning. And I'm kind of seeing the results of that now.
100%, bro. I'm with that. And I think you touched on this a little bit already when you were kind of going through that, but like, what do you feel like has been the biggest thing that you've learned since you started your coaching business? Like, would you say, I think you touched on like maybe the accountability piece, like how to hold people accountable. Would you say it's that, or would you say it's kind of something else?
Yeah, the process of entrepreneurship really opened my eyes to the sky's the limit. And the only really major thing keeping me or my business from excelling is just ignorance, like a lack of knowledge of what the next step looks like. But that also proposes an opportunity. It's like, well, if I'm at this point, and in order to get to the next point, all I have to do is acquire additional knowledge, then that's very easily achievable, but it's not achievable, in a moment's notice. Like you have to put in the time to do a lot of research. You have to test systems. You have to implement systems and get the feedback and evaluate the analytics from that. And then, so that goes back to the delayed gratification thing. But yeah, I would say that's probably the main thing is just, it's a learning process, but it's a process of learning that never stops. And I think that's what excites me and motivates me the most is because there's endless opportunity to get better. And it's really fun to get a lot better. And it's also really opened up my my life. So I get to work from home, right? So I had a daughter about 6 months ago, and I'm able to be at home and enjoy these little moments on a day-to-day basis. And I just feel a strong motivation to like share that everybody is capable of achieving this type of lifestyle. It will just take a ton of work to get here. Um, and that's really the only thing in between, the freedom that comes with entrepreneurship is just, grinding it out and just basically knowing that there is certain stages that you will get to that provide that relief that you're motivated about when you're starting off in your entrepreneurial journey.
100%. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think that resonates pretty hard with me and Colin too. Kind of whatever stage, if you're an entrepreneur, listen to this too. Like whatever stage you're at, like there's always going to be. I think it's like the beginning is the really hard part, but then once you kind of get things going, it starts to kind of compound on itself.
Yeah. And I'll be the first to admit, like, I'm still a rookie. I am not by any means like a veteran entrepreneur. So I have so much more to learn. And I could be doing a whole lot better. It's just a matter of like time is the key to that, and making sure that I'm efficient with that time by, increasing my knowledge and making sure that my clients are taken care of now at the state that I am now to the best of my ability, but also being open to them like, hey, I'm still new to this. So being accepting to a lot of feedback as well, and um, applying that feedback to how I continue to treat that client and other clients in the future.
I think I think being able to handle the criticism at first, because we were all new. I
Mm,
mean, I could have told you how to put on muscle from the start, but I wasn't confident what I said. I could
mm,
say it, but I was like, like, yeah, like let's do it like this. Like here's what I think's gonna be best. And you have that small tone in your voice. You're not truly representing what you're saying, but with time, with the practice, with the feedback, criticism that you're going to get, I'm able to now say, okay, here's what you're going to do. Here's why it's going to work and how it's going to work for you. And it's definitely just a matter of being able to fail from the start and learn from that experience to be able to take that step forward that you need.
mm. Yeah. Yeah. Failure is an opportunity. It really is.
And you only truly fail once you decide to give up on it. And because failure is just a learning opportunity for you. And if you fail
Mm,
over and over, that's just over and over you learning more knowledge, you learning what it will take to take that next step and progress in almost about every aspect of life outside of just business.
yeah, 100%.
Moving a little bit on, if a little bit more of a backside of this, if you could go back in time to your younger self, so we're talking preteen, teenage years, if you could give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Mm. Probably lean into trusting God more, seeking his guidance through the process, and just constantly sticking into a routine of making sure that you put on the armor of God each and every day. Spend time in prayer, spend time in his word, and making sure that that is the primary focus of the journey. And then let everything fall into place as a result of that. And when I was probably around this time last year, actually, I was heading into the lowest point of basically entrepreneurship, I guess, as far as the business goes. Like money was just so tight and low. I was super broke. Um, and then that really was an opportunity for me to kind of break down spiritually and say, like, God, if this is truly what you want for me and this is the route I need to go, like I'm going to trust that this is all going to work out. And I spent a lot of time just when I was down in business, just spending some time in prayer. I mean, I'd go outside and just sit, and there are a few times I cried, like I just don't know if this is gonna make it. And then through that very, very hard downtime, it taught me a lot. And then because of that, uh, I just implement that way, way more. And see how necessary it is to make sure that that's the priority going forward.
Amen to that, man.
Amen.
Yeah, I was going to say, Colin, you and I, as both as Christians, probably resonate with that pretty hard. I think it's, as an entrepreneur, it's tough sometimes to just trust in God's timing, and I think we've all. I mean, at least I've had moments too where I've broken down and cried and wondered, like, am I like, what the hell am I doing here? But
Yeah,
I think continuing to push through and just trust, like, that's the biggest thing.
yeah,
Being able to trust that, you're going to work on God's timing and not your own timing. And he has a plan laid out for you. You just have to trust that it's going to work in a matter of time and not decide to just quit or give up because it's not working. When in reality, it's going to. You just have to wait for that time.
yeah, yeah, and put in the work in the meantime, despite you being down. And that's the hardest time to keep putting in the work too. But it just has to be done no matter what.
Absolutely, absolutely, man, absolutely. I'm with you on that. Cool. Yeah, I think if again any other business owners listen to this in the audience, like keep putting in the work, keep putting in the reps. That's the only way. That's the only way you can keep it going. So
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's crazy how the journey of entrepreneurship within the past couple of years has taught me an incredible amount about life in general. Um, you know, it's crazy how this business or the journey of entrepreneurship has tested my faith in ways, but it's also strengthened my faith in ways as well. It's really, really cool to kind of reflect back and see that. So yeah, man, it's just lean into the actual process and just being able to step back and be intuitive about, okay, here's where I'm at. Like I realize this. But it with time and diligence, it just will work out if you put that faith in God. And that's the key, man, for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's awesome. That's a great advice. Great advice. Switching gears a little bit here, because it's always interesting to hear from other entrepreneurs, like kind of how the role that fitness plays in your life. So in your case, I know that you're an ultra runner, and that you've done a lot of cool athletic feats in that area. Like maybe what are some kind of goals or some stuff on your radar for 2024 as far as fitness goes, man?
Yeah. It kind of cracks me up because I'm definitely not a runner. I actually don't enjoy running a whole lot, even though I do it because I know it's good for me. This will be my first actual. So in September of 2024, I'm going to be running the Fire on the Prairie Backyard Ultra up in Indy, actually.
Oh, cool.
So
September, huh?
that's my first ever like real dabble into distance running, and it's something I'm super excited for because I've never actually dabbled in it before. So it's kind of a newer journey for me. Like I said, I run because I know it's healthy for me, but I'm usually just going a couple, 2, 3 miles, or doing some sprints or something like that. But now with the Fire on the Prairie, it's 4 miles on the hour, every hour,
Yeah.
last man standing race. So it's going to require a ton of training.
Yeah, man.
That's super exciting to me just because I'm so unfamiliar with the scope.
Yeah.
It's going to challenge me a lot. And then, literally, I think it's like 6 days after that, I'm hopping on a flight and going to Tanzania, Africa to hike Kilimanjaro. So that's an 8-day trek. And then it's a 13-day adventure and safari Kilimanjaro trek associated with that. And anybody who's interested, that's actually a trip that I'm co-leading as a retreat with a guy named Chris from Global Shenanigans. So definitely some physical endurance challenges in my view this year, which is a little bit out of my comfort zone. But I think that's for good reason.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. I know those backyards. So I've been doing a little bit of research. My dad is a big ultra marathon runner, and he kind of talked me into signing up. Well, he didn't really talk me into it. I kind of wanted to do it as well, but he talked me into signing up for this 100 miler in June up in
Ooh,
Wisconsin. Yeah, so I'm kind of I've been ramping up my training for that, and I'm sure you will be in this boat too in a few months with your race coming up in September. It's like you really got to start ramping up the miles, but it's like it kind of, to me, like ultra running it and running in general, it kind of teaches you It's like the act of doing it itself is not always the most fun, and sometimes it's even a little
Hmm.
boring. You're just kind of out there running like some slow training run or something, but it really teaches you a lot about yourself and about perseverance, and that's why I think it kind of parallels entrepreneurship in a lot of ways. Do you have a, I guess, do you have like a goal specifically for the backyard ultra? Because for those who don't know, like the backyard ultra, it's like you just run laps every hour on the hour until you can't run anymore. Do you have like a goal as far as mileage or time that you're trying to kind of get to, or just kind of play it by ear, see what happens?
Yeah, that's a good question. We went and hiked, or I went and hiked a mountain here in Central Arkansas yesterday with a couple of buddies, and he asked me this exact same question. And I was like, man, that's a good question because I don't really have any background to base it off of, because I've never been a distance runner before. So it was earlier, I think at the end of last week, I was like, I'm just going to run the 4.1 mile loop, here in the neighborhood just to see, how I do. And I was actually thoroughly impressed with my capability to just do that one lap. I think CrossFit, like me and Colin have talked about within the past couple of days, carried over a lot of that endurance capability over. So that was very eye-opening to like I can at least get one lap in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So uh, I don't really have a set goal as far as how many laps I want to do. I think as I get a little bit deeper into training, I'll get a little bit better feel. I definitely don't want to be the first one to drop, but if I'm being a little bit honest, like I'm definitely probably not going to be the last guy standing either.
I've seen some crazy stuff because I've been following like I've been dabbling more into the ultra running world and like kind of looking into some stuff, and I've seen some like crazy numbers that people have put out, like running for like literally like 3 days straight, like close to like 300 miles straight of those. Because for those who don't know too, it's like those races are set up such that every 24 hours is 100 miles. So like there are people who run
Mm.
those for like 3 days straight. I'm like, how do you even like? I can't even comprehend that. But
I haven't
Yeah,
made
I
it
think I
past.
would miss my daughter and my wife before I could get to that amount of time. Like I'm just tapping out because I miss my family.
I don't think I've made it past a mile yet in a good minute, so we're we're all a few steps ahead of me.
Kettle Moraine 100 miler, Colin. There's still time to sign up. It's not that far from you in Wisconsin.
I'm gonna join. I'm gonna join him on the backyard ultra instead of driving to Wisconsin to contemplate every life decision I have made up to that point. I will
Oh,
be
yeah.
contemplating on that drive to Wisconsin.
Yeah, that was all right.
That's
So,
funny.
whenever you are you driving up to Indy or is that a flight?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll probably end up driving because the format of that race is I think it's at a campground. So we'll probably drive the Forerunner up there. I have a rooftop tent on the Forerunner, so we'll just use that as base camp. That way, I kind of have all my stuff there, and my girls are able to hang out, and the baby's able to take a nap in the tent.
I know I know of a guy who's very handsome, great looking. He only happens to be an hour south of Indy. They got to go through his town.
I think his name is Colin, right?
Wonder who that would be.
Yeah, dude. I'm pumped. There's gonna be a lot of people there. So uh yeah, if well, there's any time at all for us to kick it, man, I'd love to for sure. And I mean, there's so many people that are signed up for that race. A lot of faces on Twitter that I've never actually met in person, but I've talked to a ton. So I'm excited for that opportunity as well.
Oh, that's cool. Who else is going out there?
Yeah, so Zach Hummel's definitely going to run it. Jordan Goldstein, he's actually the one that pushed me to
Oh,
sign up.
Jordan
Dylan
Knapp.
Speen is going to be there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Logan Turner's going to be there as well. I mean, there's literally over 20 guys, I think. Mike
Awesome.
Donatelli, I think, is going to be there. Yeah.
That's a good dude too. Yeah, no, I've actually worked with Jordan. I've done Jordan's coaching program with
Nice.
like
Yeah.
more like kind of yeah like sports, the sports history and the sports aspect of it. It's like super interesting dude. That's awesome that he's running it with you though. We want to have him on. Colin, one of these days we'll get Jordan on this podcast. I'm sure I just gotta hit him up.
Yeah, we're signing him up here soon.
Yeah. Love that guy. I'm actually co-hosting a retreat with him, or I'm bringing him on a retreat to be the co-host in April. We're going to the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia for the 5-day disconnect retreat.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, super pumped.
mean, outside of that, I mean, I think that's about all I've got, unless you got something else, Grant.
Yeah, no, I think that was most of what I want to talk about. I mean, maybe one other question. Just going back to like kind of the business side here really quick. Like of all the clients you've had, like what do you feel like it takes to kind of like what do you feel like makes a successful client in your mind? And I think Colin, you and I probably have a
Hmm.
sense of this from just general fitness coaching, with like, showing up, putting in the work and everything. But like in your niche specifically, like do you feel like it's anything specific that kind of stands out as far as successful clients go?
Yeah, it's exactly what you just touched on is the actual dedication to the process. Like when the results aren't there yet, just knowing that the results are going to be on the other side of putting in the work. The consistency is just absolutely essential.
Yeah,
I have an extremely high success rate for the people that are actually diligent to the program. And it's just a testament to, the amount of work that they put in, the results will be there. Like my systems and my program has proven over and over again that it does work. It's just a matter of, you know, if they actually put in the work. So
yeah,
that's the key factor there. Yeah.
sure, for sure, for sure. Big if, absolutely. Cool, cool. Yeah, that's pretty much all I had too. I guess aside from that, just
Yeah.
yeah, dude,
Yeah. I have a question for y'all actually.
fire away.
Yeah, I just want to see like what's the projection and trajectory that you guys are looking into, the directions you guys are looking ahead to, not only with the podcast, but within your own entrepreneurial goals as far as 2024 goes.
Yeah, ooh, good question. Colin, you want to start or me?
So in terms of my own personal business goals, I'm really trying to find just a set number. I mean, I fluctuate a lot. One month I'll make more, the next month it'll be down, and make more down. So really trying to find the narrow window or the like figure out what's gonna be best in terms of my own mental health and my personal health and the goals I want to achieve, but also, still be able to, afford things and do the things that I want to do in life. In terms of the podcast, just grow it, try to grow as best as possible. Get on, great people like yourself. We had Nate Norman on Monday, and
Yeah.
probably my two favorite episodes we've recorded to this date now
Yeah,
have been both of you. So just in terms of trying to get it to grow and get it to where we get consistent listeners to where, eventually we can hopefully monetize it if that's possible. I haven't really figured that part out yet, but
yeah,
get it going.
yeah, for sure,
Love
for
it.
sure. And yeah, I think for me too, I think as first of all, as far as the podcast, yeah, Colin, like I think getting consistent listeners, as far as monetization goes, I mean, I think naturally people who listen to it will be probably interested in our coaching programs, and things like that. And then maybe there are other ways to monetize it as well, but haven't really thought that far ahead yet. More just kind of having fun with this as a side
Yeah.
project right now. I mean, I don't. That's kind of how I look at it, Colin. But that's a lot of fun. As far as like my own coaching business, I would say similar to Colin, just getting things more consistent. I'm running right now. My kind of main method of finding new clients is through IG, Instagram ads, and so running that, trying to get that a bit more consistent. I mean, ultimately the goal is to try and kind of scale things up. And I actually did have one of my best months, not one of my best, the best month I've had in January. So it's definitely a positive kind of milestone to build off of. Yeah, going into 2024. So that was really cool. Just kind of trying to keep improving and scaling there. And then also like kind of I don't we haven't really touched on this too much in the podcast, but like my background is actually originally in high frequency trading, quantitative trading. So I basically I've been looking to kind of get started and kind of start up my own kind of side firm, trading some of my own money, and eventually kind of trying to scale that up as well. So looking to
Nice.
get that going a bit more in 2024. Yeah, it's been something I've been spending a bit more time on of late, and it's something that's been kind of exciting to work on the side too. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it, guys. I love it. That's the just sitting here and just kind of talking about like, an idea spitting and just kind of foreshadowing of, what we're trying to lean into is so much fun to me. I just love to be in this circle of a ton of entrepreneurs and all of us just build one another up. It's a really, really unique community. So everybody's on a very, very similar trajectory. The hardest thing I've found as well is just not comparing spot of where I'm at to someone else's. And I think this circle does a really good job about like not forcing that comparison, and that helps a lot. Even though like personally, you might do a lot of comparison, but everybody is just in the game together and supports one another, and it's such a great community. So yeah, and look at this, all three of us are on the podcast together, just chatting it up and being vulnerable. So I love it, guys. I love it.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And that's what it's all about. That's why I think Twitter community in particular is really cool. And I'm glad, even though I kind of pivoted over to Instagram a little bit more for just finding leads and stuff, like I still am active on Twitter, try to be as active as possible in there. And it's really always cool to interact and network with new people. Because like I think I don't know if people know this, I never actually met Austin before. I think Colin, you guys had probably connected before, but it was awesome to meet you, man, and to have you on.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on. Good to meet you as well. Good to see you too, Colin.
Good to see you, Austin.